The return of a legend. Japan revives the YF-23. Alarm in Moscow and Beijing. The night sky was torn apart by a bright flash. The pilot of the Storm Dragon engaged afterburners, sending his fighter into a sharp turn. The radar systems of Chinese anti-aircraft complexes frantically scanned for a target, but the air was empty. It seemed as if the aircraft had dissolved into the darkness. At that very moment, alarm screens flickered anxiously in the headquarters of the People's Liberation Army Air Force. A new, unidentified object had appeared at the edge of their airspace. It was moving faster and evading detection better than any known fighter jet. It wasn't an F-22 or an F-35. It was something entirely different. You might think this is an excerpt from a science fiction novel, but no, this is something that could soon become reality, and not in some distant future, but much sooner than many expect. Now let's take a closer look. A sensation's unfolding in the world of military aviation, forcing generals in Beijing and Moscow to nervously scan through intelligence reports. Japan, a country that for decades has depended on American military aviation technology, has suddenly made a move that could change the balance of power in Asia's skies. Its new project, the 6th generation FX fighter, is based on the legendary YF-23, a plane that could have been the world's first 5th generation stealth fighter, but lost to the F-22 Raptor. History is full of examples of great ideas that were ahead of their time. The YF-23 was exactly that. It was faster, stealthier, and had a longer range than the YF-22, which later became the F-22. But it wasn't technical shortcomings that doomed it. It was bureaucracy and the influence of powerful lobbyists. While Lockheed Martin promoted its F-22 as the unbeatable king of the skies, Northrop Grumman was creating an aircraft that could have revolutionized air combat. But the YF-23's time never came. Until now. 3 decades later, Japan's decided to correct this historical injustice. The newest FX fighter, developed in close collaboration with American and European engineers, is set to become the spiritual successor of the YF-23, incorporating its cutting-edge technology while adapting them to the realities of modern warfare. An improved stealth shape, powerful thrust vectoring engines, artificial intelligence, and a swarm of autonomous drone wingmen. All of this makes the FX one of the most ambitious aviation programs in Japan's history. But why is this causing such concern in Moscow and Beijing? China's already invested enormous resources into developing its J-20, hoping that it'll become the dominant force in the region. Russia's betting on its Su-57 and future 6th generation projects. But what if Japan's FX turns out to be superior? What if it possesses not only exceptional stealth, but also the ability to strike lightning fast at targets before the enemy even notices it? Today, a new era of air superiority begins. The YF-23, once considered a failure, is rising from the ashes, but in a new form, with new technology and a new purpose. And now it's ready to reshape the balance of power in the skies of the 21st century. Deep within American air bases, inside hangars hidden from prying eyes, once rested an aircraft that could have changed history. It was called the Black Widow, not because of its menacing appearance, but in honor of the legendary World War II night fighter. Its twin, the Gray Ghost, was just as mysterious as its name suggested. These 2 YF-23 prototypes were among the most advanced combat aircraft ever developed by engineers, yet they never got the chance to fulfill their potential. At the end of the 1980s, the United States stood on the threshold of a new era in aerial combat. No one could have predicted that the massive Soviet Union would unexpectedly cease to exist. So the threat from its air force seemed more than real. The skies were ruled by the Su-27 and MiG-29, fast, maneuverable, and deadly. The U.S. Air Force was searching for an answer, and the Advanced Tactical Fighter, ATF, competition was launched to determine what the next generation fighter would be. Northrop Grumman, the company that had created the legendary B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, proposed its own vision of the future. The YF-23 didn't just meet the Pentagon's requirements, it exceeded them. Its streamlined fuselage with hexagonal contours, concealed air intakes, and sharply angled vertical stabilizers arranged in a V-shape made it nearly invisible in the air. Engineers achieved an incredible level of stealth, surpassing anything that existed at the time. But its greatest advantage was speed. The 2 Pratt & Whitney YF-119 engines provided sustained supersonic cruise without the need for afterburners. This allowed the aircraft to penetrate enemy defenses quickly without revealing itself through infrared emissions. In this regard, the YF-23 significantly outperformed its competitor, the F-22, which required more fuel and at the time could not maintain supersonic speeds without engaging afterburners. The most mysterious characteristic of the YF-23, however, was its maneuverability. Contrary to the myth that the aircraft was less agile than the YF-22, Northrop engineers claimed that their fighter could perform maneuvers at angles of attack up to 60 to 70 degrees, even without thrust vectoring control. This was possible thanks to its advanced aerodynamics and structural design. This meant that the YF-23 was highly maneuverable despite lacking an advanced thrust vectoring system, an extraordinary achievement for a fighter of that era. Decades after the Northrop YF-23 lost the competition to the F-22 Raptor, this forgotten masterpiece of aviation engineering is unexpectedly getting a second life, this time in Japan. A country that had long relied on American technology for its combat aircraft is making a bold move by developing a sixth-generation FX fighter inspired by a project that once had the potential to be the most advanced combat aircraft in the world. But why the YF-23? Today, the most critical characteristics of a combat aircraft are range, stealth, and integration with unmanned systems. Even 30 years ago, the YF-23 excelled in these areas, making it the perfect foundation for Japan's future fighter. Japan understands that traditional dogfighting is becoming obsolete. Modern conflicts demand stealth and speed rather than aerobatics at low altitudes. The growing threats from China and North Korea are becoming more apparent, and Tokyo wants a fighter capable not just of countering its adversaries, but of dominating the skies. The idea of reviving the YF-23 comes from a consortium of Japanese and American companies working on the FX program. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, Kawasaki, and IHI Corporation are involved, along with American giants Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman. However, this won't be just a copy of the legendary fighter. Japanese engineers have taken the best design elements of the YF-23 and adapted them to 21st century warfare. The new aircraft will feature electronic flight surfaces instead of traditional control surfaces, making it even less detectable by radar. It'll incorporate a fiber optic flight control system, significantly increasing response speed to pilot commands. Its serpentine air intakes will reduce infrared and radar visibility. The aircraft will be powered by an advanced engine capable of generating up to 16.5 tons of thrust on afterburner. Japanese engineers are also developing thrust vectoring engines for the YF-91 model, ensuring that the FX will have outstanding maneuverability on par with the F-22 and Russian Su-30 and Su-35. Additionally, the FX will be equipped with directed energy weapons, microwave and laser cannons capable of neutralizing missiles mid-flight. This poses a serious challenge to China, which is advancing its sixth-generation JXX fighter program, and to Russia, which is striving to modernize the Su-57. The Japanese government's already allocated tens of billions of dollars for the development of the new fighter, with its first flight expected in the mid-2030s. However, progress on the FX is moving faster than anticipated, raising the possibility that a prototype could be unveiled by the end of this decade. How will such an aircraft impact the balance of power in the Pacific region? The world stands on the brink of a new era of aerial confrontation. Advances in technology and growing military tensions among global powers are forcing nations to find new ways to achieve air superiority. In this context, Japan's decision to revive the YF-23 and adapt it to modern conditions is not just a technological leap, it's a strategic challenge for the entire region. China and Russia, which previously viewed Japan's Air Force as a secondary player, are now being forced to reconsider their stance. For decades, Tokyo's relied on American technology, purchasing F-15 and F-35 fighters from the United States. However, with the development of China's J-20 Mighty Dragon and Russia's ambitious projects such as the Su-57 and the upcoming Su-75 Checkmate, it's become clear that Japan's dependence on Washington makes its Air Force vulnerable. The decision to create its own FX based on the YF-23 is Japan's way of stepping out of the shadows. No longer content with being the junior partner of the U.S., Japan's now striving for full autonomy in military aviation. And here's the main question. How will this aircraft alter the balance of power in Asia? First and foremost, it represents a challenge to China. The People's Liberation Army Air Force is rapidly expanding its aerial fleet. Beijing already possesses 1,700 fighter jets and 400 bombers, with its primary focus on the J-20 and future JXX projects. Officially, China presents the J-20 as a fifth-generation fighter capable of dominating any opponent. However, the reality is that the J-20 lags behind the American F-22 and most likely the upcoming Japanese FX in both maneuverability and stealth. A new Japanese fighter built on the stealth technologies of the YF-23 would make any Chinese air operation in the region extremely risky. China's already declared that it'll not tolerate Japan's air superiority. However, with the introduction of the FX, Beijing may find the aerial battlefield becoming far more unpredictable. The emergence of the FX will inevitably weaken Russia's position in the region. Despite developing the Su-57 and the upcoming Su-75, the Russian Federation cannot fully compete with Japan in terms of technology. While Moscow focuses on maneuverability and powerful missiles, Tokyo's prioritizing stealth, flight range, and integration with networked combat systems. In the 1990s, Russian Su-27s and MiG-29s outclassed Japanese fighters, but the FX, based on the YF-23, could become a nightmare for Russian aviation. Moscow is fully aware of this challenge. Russia's attempted to export the Su-57 to India and other nations, but now that Japan's entering the market with its own advanced fighter, the Su-57's prospects for foreign sales are becoming even more uncertain. And what about the United States? An ally or a competitor? This question is particularly relevant following Donald Trump's return to the White House. The introduction of Japan's FX could strain U.S.-Japan relations. Washington has long been accustomed to Japan purchasing American aircraft. A major program exists for Japan's Air Force and Navy to acquire U.S.-made F-35s. But what happens to that program if the FX becomes available? We already know that Trump is pressuring European allies to increase their defense spending and buy American weapons. Moreover, for decades, the Pentagon rejected the YF-23 concept in favor of the F-22 and F-35. Now Japan's taking the lead in developing a fighter that could potentially outperform American models. Unlike the F-35, which was designed as a multi-role aircraft with export potential, the FX is engineered for absolute air superiority. Because of this, it may be more appealing in terms of technical capabilities than its American counterpart. If the FX project proves successful, the U.S. may attempt to block its export to other countries to prevent it from competing with American military aviation. With the arrival of the FX built on revolutionary YF-23 technology, the global aviation industry faces a new challenge. This fighter could do more than just enhance Japan's Air Force. It could become a new standard for America's allies, potentially even surpassing the F-35 in several key areas. But is Washington ready for such a scenario? Could Japan become the next center of aerial dominance, fundamentally reshaping the structure of Western air power? Until now, the market for fifth-generation fighter jets has been nearly monopolized by the U.S. The primary export fighter has been the F-35 Lightning II, purchased by more than 10 countries, including the United Kingdom, Italy, Israel, South Korea, and Australia. However, the FX marks a turning point in military aviation history. Instead of remaining dependent on American designs, Japan is, for the first time, creating a platform capable of competing with the United States itself. The FX is being developed not just for Japan's needs, but also with export sales in mind for U.S. allies. Among potential buyers is South Korea, which is actively advancing its aviation industry, but could benefit from the FX's cutting-edge technologies. Australia, already a customer of the F-35, might find the FX more appealing due to its superior stealth and extended range, critical factors for defending vast territories. And somewhat paradoxically, India. Despite its military cooperation with Russia, New Delhi's grown disillusioned with the Su-57 and is searching for an alternative. The Japanese fighter jet could become just that option. Furthermore, such cooperation strengthens Japan, China's long-standing rival, which is also an adversary of India. While the global aviation community eagerly awaits the fate of the FX project, one thing is already clear: the Japanese fighter is not just an evolution in technology, but a symbol of new political and military dynamics. The resurrection of the YF-23 in the form of the FX represents not only a technological breakthrough, but also a significant step toward shifting the balance of power in Asia and even globally. The developments unfolding in the Pacific region serve as a testament to how innovative projects can reshape the global security landscape. The YF-23 was once hailed as a visionary aircraft ahead of its time. Its rejection in favor of the F-22 is now widely seen as a mistake. Decades later, Japanese engineers are bringing this project back to life, incorporating the latest advancements to create a machine capable of outmatching its Western competitors. The power and stealth of the FX provide it with unique advantages that will force not only the U.S., but also China, Russia, India, and other nations to rethink their military strategies. At the same time, Japan's development of a new generation of fighter jets has become more than just a matter of defense. It's a bold political statement about leadership in the aerospace industry. By entering the race to develop sixth-generation fighters, Japan is signaling its readiness to become a major player in the global aviation industry, aiming for closer cooperation with U.S. allies while positioning itself as a potential competitor to China. This is no longer just a dream, it's a real threat to the established military giants. However, this is not just a matter of strength, it's also a question of political will and the readiness to embrace new realities. Ultimately, Japan has the potential not only to alter the balance of power in Asia, but also to offer its allies a new benchmark for future fighter jets. If the FX makes its way to the global market, it'll mark a significant shift in the history of military aviation, rewriting the rules of the industry. The future of the FX, like that of the entire aviation sector, remains uncertain. But one thing is already clear: the Japanese project could become the turning point that changes the game in global aviation. In this context, the future will no longer belong solely to the US, Russia, or China. It'll open up to new powerful players like Japan. And perhaps the FX will become the foundation upon which not only the Japan Air Self-Defense Force, but also numerous other nations will build their next-generation air power. What do you think? Will Japan succeed in creating the FX using the YF-23 as its prototype? Could this aircraft become a serious challenge for Beijing, Moscow, and even Washington? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.